Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Debbie from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. And you guys know what that means, right? On a Saturday evening, I have an educator from across the world. It could be in the UK, it could be anywhere, where I share a discussion with them. They tell us what they're doing right now. They tell us what it was like pre, during, and post COVID, right? And whether or not they're still in the profession or they decide to, you know what, I had enough of this place, I'm out of teaching, right? So today I've got another fantastic educator, right, who would share her journey with us. Well, let's say she was an educator, right? So she decided to dish us and do something else. Welcome, 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 Natalia. Thank you so much for accepting the offer to come, and I'm so grateful for that. Introduce yourself, tell us where you come from, and tell us your journey pre, during, and post.
Thank you so much. Um, so I'm Natalia, and yes, I'm from London. Is where I'm from, born and bred. Um, and I was a teacher um just before COVID. So I trained and then in 2017-18, and I did my first NQT year in 2018-19. Um, After my NQT year, I left the school I was at and I did supply for a little while up until the first lockdown. Um, in the first lockdown, because of kind of the crisis and the fact that schools were closed and no one really knew what was going on, I got myself another job. Um, it wasn't that wasn't the main reason why, but I was already thinking of moving into something different, um, which we'll discuss later. But I got myself a different role, which I've actually stayed in since now. Only just now have I stopped, as I've relocated to Holland. So I've left London. But yeah, for the last 3 years since the pandemic started, I have been working for various local authorities. I also studied in that time as well. So I was working, but also finished my psychology master's. And I worked as a SEND officer, so a case officer for different local authorities. And we work specifically with children that have education, healthcare plans in the UK. And we kind of manage different cases. Sometimes you could have caseloads of like 200 children, and you're allocated different schools. So that was what I was doing. Yeah, up until now. So it's
Okay.
been a bit of an adventure, but very
Yeah.
interesting. And I'm happy to still work with children and families because that is important to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's interesting though, because you've had some educators who, was educators and they realized that the profession wasn't for them, either
Yes.
because the school they were in or the negative experience, etc. Would you like to share your journey as to why you decided to ditch us as a teacher?
I'm sorry. I didn't really want to ditch, to be honest. I really love working with children. They are so beautiful.
Yes.
But yeah, for me, the main reason was work-life balance.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel that the it's really hard to say because I think we need to be careful as an educator at some point in my life. Even though I didn't have a lot of experience, I think every educator does have pressure,
Mhm.
but I felt like my confidence decreased um as I went on in my experience. So it started at the end of teacher training. And I don't feel that it really picked up in my first year. So I don't want to say the school itself was responsible, but I also don't feel like I was really made to feel really, really
Supported.
confident. I don't think that's necessarily their fault. I think some people and some senior management were great in my school where I did my NQT, but I also think that I think there was a failure on my part to realize that my confidence had really gone down, and also a bit on their part to see, you know what, this person has really, her confidence has lowered. There's something there that needs to be raised. We need to really support that. And one of the biggest things in that year that I have found challenging was having a child in my class who was really, really, really difficult. Now, for an NQT who's literally just come out of that training, and you have such different experiences in each school that you go to train, right? So when you go into your new class, it's nice to have that baby step in, to feel really like, okay, you need to master one thing. And once you've got that, you can get something more difficult. But I felt like I was in the deep end from the beginning, and I didn't feel heard until maybe spring when I was put onto a support plan.
Wow.
As part of my NQT. But I didn't feel like, I felt like I needed it, but I felt like I was judged. Like, it's because of you, it's your behavior management style, it's your way of working. But I actually felt, no, I think there has been failure to address certain concerns that the teacher has. So yeah, I felt less heard. And on top of that, the exhaustion from kind of the pressures you face, having children need to attain a certain amount, they need to pass, they need to have good behavior, they need to be doing all their work, you need to have marked all your books, you need to do all the assemblies. It was a lot. So I felt quite burnt out towards the end of the year. I definitely made progress, and I was happy where I ended up from where I began. But it was like, it was tiring, and I was too tired to push forward in the other year. I thought, nah, I need a timeout. So yeah, I went into supply just to see how I felt. And I think I just thought it don't know, it didn't feel right with me. I felt like I couldn't own it. I felt like a puppet in a sense. I was doing too much of what other people wanted, and I wasn't able to act freely as how I thought that the children should be educated, if that makes sense. I
It
don't know if
does
I
make
make, yeah.
it make so much sense. It's interesting, right? It's that's so because because I'm also a supply teacher. And
Okay.
I met a teacher who in one of my previous school I was in, she was a head of department. And she said, she said she's done that for a number of years. And in the last 2 years, she said she felt burnout and she came out of it. Right? She spent 6 months out of teaching, and then she came as a supply teacher. And she said she's had enough, and exactly what you're saying right now, right? Where she was an assistant principal, and she was in charge for training in 4 different schools from the trust. And she said nobody was listening to her. She said she was burned out, but nobody was hearing her. And she said when she had enough, she just handed in her notice and she said she left. And it's interesting. I'm listening to you talking about the behavior management in school. And it's so interesting because I was in a school that had an extreme behavior problem. And when I told the head teacher that as far as she's concerned is my problem, I couldn't teach. And I did not have good behavior management skills. And at one time, had I not been teaching for such a long time and taught in different schools, it probably would have really cracked me or crushed me. Because she's saying to me, oh, well, miss, it's your problem because you don't know how to have, your behavior management in the classroom is wrong. And it was the blame, blame, blame. And I thought, you know what? It's time to leave the school. And
Yeah.
what was so beautiful is they kept me on because they wanted me to support them in terms of the health and social care packages, etc. But the beautiful thing about it is they began to have supply teachers to cover the areas that I came out of. And no supply teacher stayed more than 3 days. Right? And I was glad, because the reason I was glad that this head teacher need to see that it was not the teacher she blamed. The school had a problem. And even when I was talking to the teachers who were prominent, and they said, well, it's nothing to do with the teachers, there's a problem, but they don't want to hear us. There is a problem. So I hear you. And you know what is that same school, when I left that school, I had issues with the head teacher, but in the end of the day, she realized she needed me more than I needed her. And even when I left the school, that, some of the teachers were still, reaching out to me to support them, right? But, I was supporting them because I just liked, the team was fantastic. And there was a teacher who was an NQT, and the amount of load they were putting on that teacher, she was off sick and all. I said to her, you need to take time off. I said, because it's not your problem. The school have a problem.
Yeah.
I said, because we all can be singing the same situation. It can't be blaming us. There is a problem with the school. And that teacher, actually, now that I'm talking about, I need to reach out to her to see if she's still there. The last time I heard, she had some time off because she was having so much pressure. They wanted her to become the lead on health and social care. She had no experience with that. So how could you want an NQT to be lead on health and social care who had no experience and teaching this topic for the first time without training?
Yeah. Lack of teacher retention. Sometimes they just, put people in places.
Exactly. And the sad reality is, hence the reason why we have such a high shortage of teachers. It's, you have agency calling you several times because they haven't got enough teachers to cover these jobs.
Yeah. At the moment, I get a lot of emails actually in my inbox. I also had a lot of schools when my most recent jobs as case officers. Obviously, a lot of children with an EHCP, formerly known as statements. Sometimes they're entitled
Sorry,
to
let me just interrupt you a second. Can you tell us what EHPT means? I know, but my audience
Yes,
would probably
EHCP, Education, Health and Care Plan. So it's a legal document, only within, I think at the moment, England.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Wales have something similar, but I know that this is in England, and it's basically a legal document that kind of states what the child's needs are in the school and what provision they need. And this is for specific children that have been identified by the school and local authority as needing extra funding on top of what they are given at special needs support level in their school. So it's around more than 10,000, which is what state funded schools are normally allocated through the kind of the funding itself. So every child in a normal school mainstream state funded school is allocated roughly around 4,000. It can be different depending on the area. The child has identified special needs by the SENCO. The school can be, and they're put on the register, the school can be allocated an extra 6,000 per child. But if they still are unable to support that child, they can apply for an education health care plan, and the local authority will fund for extra provision for that child. So sometimes it's like a teaching assistant. And what I have been hearing for the last couple of years since the pandemic is we don't have we can't recruit teaching assistants. This is what I'm hearing from schools.
Wow.
And it's really interesting because, yes, I already know that we already know generally that teaching assistants are not well paid on average, especially out of the London area.
Mhm.
Um, I think the teacher salary has gone up as
Mhm.
far
Yes,
as
it
I'm
is.
aware. I mean,
Yeah.
according to uh Gov, it's now 41K on
Mhm.
average,
Mhm.
but teaching assistants do not get a lot.
Mm.
And as well as kind of, yeah, like a inability to keep teachers, like that retention. Yes, we're getting more teachers, but they're not
Mhm.
staying in their
Mhm.
roles. The same
Mhm.
is there's a shortage of that consistency, and then the same for teaching assistants.
Mhm.
They're not recruiting.
Mhm.
So
I
yeah.
totally agree with you on that. My goodness. So you're saying that for special needs children, especially in primary school, you could get the school would get upper, let's say 10,000 plus for a child.
Yeah, I can't be too clear on the exact amount.
Yeah.
There's a guidance online, a statutory school guidance, and it kind of outlines how the funding is allocated, but
Mhm.
it's roughly around before we get involved, like the local authority get involved, the schools are allocated around more or less that amount, or so they're supposed to be, uh, per child with SEN. If they don't have SEN, it's the 4,000. I'm not sure where the free school meals entitlement comes in. That could be also extra funding.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but for the children who are on the SEN register, they get extra. They're supposed to receive extra money as well. So it will be within the school's budget.
So what is this money for?
This money is for the amount that children get in general, the 4,000, which the government allocates to each child, that's just for school resources,
Right.
just everyday things, necessities that every child, in order to receive an education, needs. The
Okay.
extra support, the 6,000 that children with special needs get, is for training for staff and teachers. It's for level, you know how you have like a whole class approach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for whole class approaches, things that should be readily available in mainstream schools before they would need extra funding. So that's things like um that might be things like having a dyslexia or having an autism kind of training in your school or an outreach. It's for, I think, EPs, educational psychologists, speech and
Mm-hmm.
language therapists time. So you can use that to allocate for your certain children. And for specialist resources that your school needs for those specific children that have specialist needs. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just giving examples possibly, but Senkos will obviously have more insight and know how kind of that works and what they use their resources for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an outsider for that. I just know that they are supposed to be receiving that amount.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you. So you're saying that, let's say if one class have 4 children with who have been statemented, each child get roughly £10,000.
Yeah, I mean the school gets it and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it should be used for those children, yes.
Right.
Well, they'll get 6,000 per child for special needs, and they will have to allocate all of that money for those children. And the school can choose how to do that.
Right. Our question is, so can the parents suggest how they want that money to use on their children?
No, they can only do that when a child has an education healthcare plan. So that would be when I mean, parents obviously are really important in in kind of planning for their child's education. I mean, parents' advice should be taken on board and they should be involved in meetings. But no, parents don't kind of dictate or have influence over how school resources are allocated. But when a child has an education health care plan, there's a section on it that says personal budget. And if a parent so wishes, they can request to the local authority that they choose how specific provisions are allocated to their child.
Right. The reason why I'm asking that is I've got a child who they've got an education plan.
Yes.
And I was speaking to the father today, and he was saying that the child is now in a special needs school. The child was in mainstream school,
Yeah.
and the school was getting, the extra for that child. And he felt that the school did not use it appropriately for that child because he felt that the child should not be now in a special needs school because the child
Okay.
wasn't supported enough.
Yeah.
And he then said to me, once the local authority get involved, it becomes a different situation because the local authority got involved and then, say that this child is going to go to a special needs school.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's another show I'm going to have you come on because those are, specialist information I would really like, parents out there to know what the choices are and what
Yeah.
the rights are because it is so important.
Yeah.
So you've actually on this new journey because teaching wasn't for you. And how did you see this new role as a SENCO officer, manager, etc.?
Send off say, yeah, I really, really I really enjoyed it. I really, really
Right.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because in terms, I mean, if I have to compare it to teaching,
Yes.
I would say that first of all, there is less of a um there is less of an imbalance in your work life. So yes, you do work a lot and we have a challenging role. We have to deal with different situations. There's a lot of conflict and challenges, parent disagreements, school disagreements. So it can be challenging to have negative conversations and a feeling like parent distrust, for example, at times. But in terms of the daily working hours, you log on, you do as much as you can do in your hours, and there is no expectation afterwards when you're going home, when you're leaving the office, or if you're working remotely, for example, unless you wanted to continue working. Whereas I felt like in teaching, because of that limited planning time, so I'm not sure if things have changed, but as it stood in the NQT year, you were given one full day for planning. And that reduces after that to a half day. Or if we think of it in hours, if we teach for 6 hours a day, that's 3 hours of planning. And that's 3 hours of planning for a week because you need to, and it depends on your teams as well, because I was in a team of three. I'm grateful for that because that meant three of us split the planning. But there are some schools out there, there's one teacher per year, or there's two teachers per year. And you're having to do so many subjects, especially if you're in primary. If you're a secondary teacher, okay, you have your own subject. But I was a primary teacher and we had to do a range of subjects. So it's very, very, very limited amount of time to planning. And I felt like I was doing planning in a lot of parents, a lot of media hype out there about teachers, getting so many holidays. We do our planning, I believe. Some teachers do in holidays. We do our organizing, we should be taking a holiday, but that is not it's not a sufficient amount of time to get that most effective planning in. So I felt like that's what I was doing. I was marking and I was planning outside of my working hours. I was at home with my books. I was planning in half terms, I was planning. So you don't really switch off.
Mhm,
So in this role, I did feel like that I could switch off more.
mhm,
Um, the other benefit at the time was the salary. It was more attractive than a teaching salary. However, because of the cost of living and obviously the inflation, everything rises. So I think in both jobs, both salaries have increased.
mhm,
Um, so I do think it's kind of on par now.
mhm,
Um, and I think it's a role in terms of you work with a variety of agencies, so you really can connect with other services in the local authority. You're not just stuck to your one role and you don't see the bigger picture. This role
mhm,
has allowed me to see how different services work together to support children and young people in
mhm,
school.
mhm,
And that's what I've enjoyed.
mhm,
I've enjoyed that the most. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this role.
mhm.
A lot of teachers do go on to go into this kind of role that I'm in.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and I've also even seen senior leaders move into this kind of role.
Mhm, mhm. It's interesting. Thank you for that. I've got two friends who were teachers and moved over into that role.
Oh wow! So there you
Yes, because you see, for them, exactly what you talk about, the work-life balance. And one of them said to me, you know, Debbie, it's hard work, but at least I know when I leave the office, I'm not going home and back.
yeah.
You
I
see,
mean, I think if you are a person who is very, very organized, and maybe I mean this is the thing as well. Some teachers love their role. And that's why it's really important. And I'm really grateful for your show, for different people to show their experience because
mhm,
everyone is different. For
mhm,
me, maybe I'm not as organized as others. Maybe I feel
mhm,
more overwhelmed by the workload, and maybe
mhm,
that's why I didn't feel I could cope
mhm,
as much as other people who, they get things done on time. They do their planning quickly, they make quick decisions, they don't reinvent the wheel.
mhm,
They go and grab resources from things that have been done before and they just update them for their class. But yeah, it was really difficult for me to do
mhm,
that. And I think a big part of that was my confidence in myself
mhm,
and being indecisive. Should I do this? Is this the best thing for my class?
mhm,
And it does
mhm.
waste time. So yeah, I think different factors affect um how much you enjoy your role and how much you can cope with the workload because it is a high workload in teaching. And I just was a person that I didn't feel that I coped effectively.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Right, thank you for that. That is so enlightening because people seem to feel that, especially the media, this hype. Oh, you guys have so much holidays. You guys, as I keep on saying to people, we have holidays, yes, but as you rightly say, in this holiday, you're looking for resource because in the previous lesson, you had some student who didn't understand the topic and didn't cope. So you need to think of ways to enable them to cope, to
Yeah.
teach them to understand better, and it's a whole host of things. Um, when it comes to planning, my planning now take place on any piece of paper I could find, right? Because when I started teaching, because I've been teaching for way past 20 years, when I started teaching,
Wow.
it was the planning, it's like when you plan, I remember my first teaching experience, the amount I planned, there's no way in hell I could have got through that in one lesson. But you
Yeah.
don't know how much to do because you're told that you have this class, you need to make sure they're engaged, so you just overplan. But
Yeah.
as you become, let me say, familiar in the role, you no longer reinvent the wheel. I do not reinvent no wheel. I go into a school, they have some resources there, and I bring my resource. I'm thinking, you know what, that's good. But I don't like this. This is a little bit boring. Let me tweak it.
Yeah.
Right? So I do quite a lot of tweaking things and adding extra, combining with experience, in terms of making it become alive for the student, linking it to their own experience. Because I
Yeah.
think if we teach according to our plan, we're going to be stuck
Yeah.
because it's very prescriptive sometimes. There's sometimes you have to ditch the plan. There's sometimes I have a plan lesson and I'm going in there with my workbook well planned up. And I got in there and I realized, oops, the student mindset is not for my topic today. Let's have a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So things like that. And as teachers, you need to be able to think on your feet.
You need to be able to adapt quickly, be able
Yes.
to come up. If you can see that it's not going well,
Yeah.
you have to think, right, how can I bring this audience back in and engage them? What's going to
Yeah.
make them, spark?
Yes. Yes.
I have
Because
another reason actually why I think as well I made a decision to stick to what I was doing.
mhm,
I have a few teacher friends, and one of the things that I felt that they actually enjoyed about the pandemic was that they didn't always have to go in. I know that schools were open for specific children that were vulnerable, but a lot of my friends were saying, you know what, it's a blessing to wake up and do Google School or Teams or whatever we have and not have to go into work. And I think one of the reasons, as you said before, why people may have had a decision to leave after the pandemic was a lot of other jobs were offering fully
yes.
remote working. And this job that I was in, I mean, because I went into it as a pandemic started, I work from home and I've been in remote contracts for, the last part of 3 years. I'm not an advocate for fully remote. I do believe it's nice to go in and see people, connect with people, widen your circle. And just it's that human kind of interaction in real life. It's
Mhm,
necessary. But it's nice to have that flexibility, Oh, you
mhm,
know what? I'm gonna work from home today,
mhm,
which at this time is not the case yet. I know
mhm,
that that is something that people are thinking, is there going to be a, educational reform? Is there going to be a point in our system where we're going to say, oh, we're going to educate online? But
mhm,
I don't think that that's something that's going to happen anytime soon based on
mhm,
kind of research
mhm,
that's recently happened about school attendance
mhm,
because if they're trying to crack down on that and get people in and attending school,
mhm.
are they going to roll out online school? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think that is something that people also thought about. Why do a teaching job when I can work remotely when I
Mhm.
want to?
Yes, I must say, when we were online, part of it was good, but the other part was the engagement was so low,
Yeah.
right? Because I had situations where students were coming and logging on and going about their business.
Yeah, they're just there. You can see that they're there.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like a number of times when I switch off, say bye, I'm sitting here to see who is going to come and switch off. They're not coming until I end up having to switch off because they're either sleeping or they just log on and they go about the business. They're not even in the vicinity. How many times when I switch off, 10 minutes after I finish teaching, there are 3 students still on,
Yeah.
right?
So they haven't been doing what they should
Exactly.
be doing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm saying, hello, is anybody there? And then you realize there's nobody there. And even when you went back, students were saying, oh, yes, they were in the bed, they were doing this, they were doing that. And, you know,
Yeah, and it also impacted on kind of as well as technical issues, so even getting your class started or kind of working out how you were gonna like one of my friends was saying if I had 20 screens and I was telling them, okay, show me your whiteboard or show me something, it's harder to pick out misconceptions or see which children aren't following it along where you have so many different screens at the same time. And also, you just don't know who's following and who's not. But then,
exactly.
lack of distance and familiarity with the parents means lack of kind of responsibility, you know. You're
Mhm,
not seeing these parents every day because it's at home. So,
mhm,
I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak on behalf of parents, and I'm sure it was a really difficult time for them. But there was an opinion that
mhm,
some parents, and I mean, if I was one, maybe I would be the same, were kind of a bit more relaxed about the home. You know, what can we do? This is the
mhm,
situation we're in. It's not as structured. There's a big crisis going on. Let's just let the children um do some work, but it wasn't as
structured.
reinforced as when you're
Mhm,
in school, you know, and that
mhm,
also may have impacted on the level of effort,
mhm,
you know, children were putting in at that time.
mhm,
Um, and some government research that has been carried out, it's been written in that they did like a parent survey
mhm,
after the pandemic, and some parents, you know, parents' attitudes. And it was saying that there is a consensus that some parents are feeling now that they're not sending in their children as much. They definitely are sending children in, but it's since the pandemic, it's like it's not as serious not
mhm.
sending in your child to school. Maybe there's that kind of like just a lowering of that real responsibility. I don't know.
Mhm,
Maybe people are exhausted and it's just
mhm,
the aftermath of such a crazy period.
mhm. That too. That is so very true because it's interesting when the children go back, because I teach secondary school, and when they go back, I think it was business as usual. People forget that these young people had a major crisis and trauma, that they
Yeah,
had high expectation for them to just come in and become robust and just switch on and get on
yeah,
with the work. But then we find that they come in, you're looking for them because the attendance, instead of them coming in for 9 o'clock, I was having students coming in all 10, all 11. Sometimes I'm not even seeing them at all. And I'm
oh,
teaching exam classes.
yeah.
Sometimes a class of 12, I might have 8 of them. And I'm thinking, your next step is university, but they were where they are.
Yeah, they didn't catch up.
Exactly.
And I was gonna say that in the national stats that have been recorded, and this is available online, after special schools, secondary has the highest number of um absence.
Mhm,
So primary was the lowest, then it was secondary, just slightly lower than special schools. But special schools, you have to account for children with complex medical needs who
mhm,
might need to stay at home.
mhm,
And also parents scared of them contracting something that could, you know, alleviate their health concerns.
mhm,
So it's quite interesting that secondary had a lot higher absence rates than primary, because
mhm,
you'd think, okay, primary school children, you know, school isn't as it is it's not as serious, you know, there's no GCSE, there's no kind of things that are getting you ready for university at that level. You're a child, you're just going to
mhm,
school, learning and playing.
mhm,
But they had less absence than children in secondary, which I find really interesting.
mhm.
Um,
What do you
and
think
in
could be the reasons?
well, in my role, we had a lot of children who had there was increasing number of mental health, as you just touched on
Mhm,
now when you were saying, you know, they've been through a kind of trauma. There was increasing number of mental health concerns, and parents were exhausted after the pandemic.
mhm,
Children had lost that structure and routine, and everything
mhm,
was kind of up in the air. And
mhm,
I dealt with a few cases where children who was going to school before suddenly are just, um, you know, deciding they're not attending. They were overwhelmed, they were anxious. Um, and I know that the government has addressed this and they're looking to you know, they've already put a few projects in place that they're rolling out. But obviously only time will tell how successful this is. But I've checked the absence rates from this autumn compared to last autumn, and it has gone down by like
Okay.
just 1%. But
Wow.
but yeah, last year was the highest uh percentage of absences since 2016.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
interesting. That's so interesting. As you were saying in terms of children that not turning up to school in secondary school,
yeah,
we had a number of children who what do they call it? Where they cannot cope with coming to school. They become so overwhelmed. I
yeah,
had in a school I've been in, I had 4 students who they're not turning up because they felt overwhelmed, they cannot cope. There's some issues. I was really shocked because I've never had so high a number. And in some of the other schools I was teaching in, I've not even had that. And when I came to that school, I was thinking, oh my goodness, some of them you haven't even, GCSEs you have not even heard. Their name is on the register, but that's it. You've never seen what they look like.
yeah. We have a lot of these cases at the moment. I've seen a few. So it can be that um a parent chooses to withdraw the child and home educate in some instances. Maybe they're not ready to go back into school, and so the parent decides, okay, I'm going to home educate them instead. They're not ready to go back in, overwhelmed. Or in some cases, eh, I mean, they're signed up with a school, so add school admissions puts them in. They're uh, they're having some issues. There's something about it that they don't want to go in for, and they just don't go. And these are the children where, you know, support is really, really, really essential, not just for the child, but for the family as well. Because as professionals working with children, you know, we're not going to know everything about what's happening in that child's life. And again, you know, you have to be really careful not to judge and be very open-minded. But sometimes I think in some cases, I think parent anxiety or things happening in the parent's life can also affect the children.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really, really hard to do anything with that as a teacher. You kind of just have to get on with your class. And this is where schools really need the support of other services like social services, CAMS, the local authority, so inclusion, to work with the families and kind of explore how they're going to help them to start getting back into education.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
Mhm.
but it is sad. Yeah, I've seen way more cases um since the pandemic of children that are just not going to school at all, which is called severe absenteeism. So there's some
That's it. I
children,
couldn't
yeah,
remember it was. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
some children regularly miss school, and that could just be because parents are saying, okay, they can just have a day off or they've gone on holiday. Well, there's some children that are just not attending at all, and it's increased.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So why do we? Because it's like I had in one of my year 13 group, I had one student who definitely, but then I had, a few others who would come in and out and use a variety of excuses. And in
yeah,
my GCSE, I had two that definitely severe absenteeism, in terms
yeah,
of you're thinking, we didn't even know what the causal factors were.
yeah. It's really hard. I don't think there's any one thing that can be pinpointed, but I definitely think that there are different factors happening at the moment within the UK education system. But I know that this absenteeism is not just within the UK. I think since the pandemic, there are other countries that are also seeing this trend. But within the UK, there are different factors. I think there's a shortage of funding to schools. So there's cuts, which obviously impacts on training for staff, quality of teachers in areas of expertise. And then obviously that means what level, what quality of education are the children receiving, and how is that environment at school? I also think an increase in children with additional needs
Mm-hmm.
causes schools having to cope with a larger amount of needs and not having support from services
Mm-hmm.
to deal with that. That's something else. So, I've had so many schools where they're saying, like the amount of children we have with varying different needs in school might not just be special needs. There can be social care needs, there can be
Mm-hmm.
complex health needs, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's hard for specifically mainstream schools
Mm-hmm.
to cope with. And the thing is, the law means that schools are independent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they don't have to accept, children, but mainstream schools do,
Mm-hmm.
because due to schools admission. So you just have to kind of deal with and have a strategy for the children that you're going to receive, and it's really difficult. But yeah, lack of funding, decreasing teacher retention, um, obviously an increase in the mental health concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I think these are all factors that have contributed to kind of a rise in absence. Maybe lack of support for families
Mm-hmm.
post-pandemic as well.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know how you said, I think it went back to business as usual. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that isn't
Mm-hmm.
concern in itself. Should that have been the approach?
Mm-hmm.
School catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Children have lost um, a lot of time and a lot of, you know, um, opportunity to learn properly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the way that they were going on, the government is, okay, we're going to do summer school catch up, or we're going to cram everything in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an appropriate way
Mm.
for our children to get back into education?
Mm. That's
So
so
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like when we went back, it was business as usual. It didn't even dawn on anybody's head that these children had a pandemic where they were in isolation.
yeah,
They were not socializing with the friends. So therefore, how could you bring them back in and expect them to retain the curriculum
yeah,
and have some form of discipline, which they haven't had for months?
yeah. And maybe a lack of even kind of physical activity.
Mm,
Because in the pandemic, yeah, you can go outside, but probably, I mean, as depending on your family dynamics, on what your families prioritize, we don't know what children were doing and what activities they were consuming while
mm,
they're at home. What if a lot of children were just sitting watching a screen? I'm not saying that. I am in no way saying that physical activity um has an impact on this, because obviously I need to be careful that I'm not suggesting that. I haven't got any evidence to back that up. But what I'm saying is it is it is true that being active, getting fresh air, being social does have a positive impact on your well-being.
mhm,
And they are things that may have been decreased in that period of time for
mhm,
children.
mhm, mhm. Spot on. We don't even have to have statistics to back up that. Just go back into schools and the behavior alone telling you those were
Yeah,
some of the factors that was missing. Because we are social beings and we were not able to socialize as much as we used to. So therefore, a lot of children spend the time in isolation. When they actually went back, although we were saying to them no contact, forget that. When they
yeah,
actually came back in, I just had to stand back, because as much as we were saying to them, oh, you're not supposed to be touching, you're not supposed to, they were not even hearing us. They were just grabbing each other. They were kissing up each other. It's just
Yeah.
all of those things,
Oh
you
gosh.
know. Exactly. So the non-contact was a joke, you know.
Yeah.
I remember looking at my teenagers and saying, well, social distancing, there's a miss. So what would this do? And in the end, I thought, you know what? I'm tired. I'm leaving you guys. I said, do whatever.
Yeah.
Because, when you're saying to them social distancing, you realize that you were talking to yourself because
Yeah.
they were going out at break time. And the time you look at them, they were already linking arms.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
So situation like that was really, was mind
It's
blowing.
really difficult. It
Yeah.
sounds really, really difficult, especially in secondary school, because children, younger children, I think eh, they do have a mind of their own, but they're
Mm-hmm.
more likely to listen to the adults.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whereas when you're in high school, if you think something makes sense, okay, you might listen to the adult. If you don't think it makes sense, and depending on what your family's told you or what you've been exposed to at home, you you don't have that fear anymore, of
Yes.
and that's why it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be about instilling fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's mutual respect, but it must have been really hard for teachers post pandemic or just post lockdown to have to put these things in place, these measures in place that didn't even maybe make sense to themselves and have to
Mm.
enforce them.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I'm
What
quite
you said.
glad that I wasn't, unfortunately. It sounds bad, but yeah, it sounds like it would have been really, really difficult. And yeah, a lot of my teacher friends just said sometimes there was no point trying to control it, you know.
It
You
wasn't
can't,
making sense.
yeah.
Nope. Nope. Because especially talking about, we had to have the windows open for fresh air, the door open. I remember one because at that time I was teaching in a private school, and the student come in and said, Miss, it's cold. It doesn't make sense having the door open. The Karen, I just sat at my desk and I just watched them because it's like there was not because what they say made sense. And I said,
Yeah.
Miss, what do you think? And I'm saying,
Yeah.
well, I really don't have an opinion. Yes, Miss, you do have an opinion. And I'm sitting there thinking, only if you know my opinion is totally contrary to what's happening. So because this student didn't feel it made sense, and you as a teacher didn't feel half of this made sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you are meant to, uphold those, implement those, etc. It's like when they had this, the ban where the student cannot come close up to you, where your desk were, etc. At one time, I said to the student, I said, do you realize there's a line on the floor which you guys are not supposed to cross? They just look at me and just continue coming towards the desk. And you're thinking, because it doesn't make no sense.
Yeah. How is that going to make a difference? And
Exactly.
also, some students will have used that and to their advantage to exploit. So if they
Yes.
know that a teacher couldn't make contact, or if a teacher couldn't, they had to be distant, they can do things, just because they can to break
Yeah.
the rules,
Yeah.
and know that they probably wouldn't be penalized for it. Well, they may, but if things aren't making sense and it's really hard to control, it's kind of like saying, I can see a loophole in this and I'm going
Mm.
to test it. I'm going to push boundaries. And if I
Yep.
can get away with it, it
Yep.
kind of, I can see why for older students, it might make them think this school thing is a joke. And going forward after that, in,
Yep.
post kind of pandemic and all the regulations, nothing's changed. Or
Mm.
maybe it has, but you still have the same kind of system. And if children has saw how that system was trying to operate in a pandemic, are they not thinking now, do I, are we still doing the same things? Where's the reform? Where's the change to the
Mm-hmm.
teaching approaches? Why can't we do part-time learning and have some of our own learning, at home? Why has it got to be full days in school? Because I know that some children will probably prefer to do maybe 3 days at school, 2 days at home. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm really interested myself to see what is going to happen going
Yes,
forward and whether there are going to be any differences in approaches in like state funded schools.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you for that. You know what is so interesting in all of that? Every sector have had uh, um, electronic or changes in terms of that's the technology. The only place there have not been sustainable technological changes in education. When we had the pandemic, we were technology was on the forefront at everything we were doing. We went back into so-called normal classroom. Technology is thrown out of the window.
Yeah, yeah. You've just gone back. There hasn't
Yeah.
been any kind of, how can we use this? I have read something recently that's saying that the government, the UK, the DFE, Department for Education, are looking to roll out a pilot of an AI,
Oh, oh
um,
yes. Look.
AI lesson planner or AI technology to help teachers plan their lessons, etc.
Yeah.
Because I tried it out. I went on when that Chat GBT came out, I went on there and I put me a year 4 lesson plan. And it actually was not it it was very, very um it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, as a very basic plan. So I found that quite interesting.
Mhm.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry that I cut you
No,
there.
no. That's fine, no problem. That is so very true. I saw the article you were talking about, and I said I would speak to my students about it next week because it was having AI in the classroom to plan a lesson and something else. And I'm thinking, what are they trying to say? Right?
Yeah.
Instead of them saying, okay, you all have technology, use it a lot more now, instead of saying you're going to give us an AI to do something in the classroom. That
Yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because eventually they're going to say, okay, we don't need the teachers anymore. Let's have the AI to be the teacher in the classroom.
Mm. I don't think that will happen though, because I think um teachers have a can form special relationships, with their children. I think that's what one of the more rewarding things, which I miss. Um, I really enjoyed actually being a teaching assistant. I think that's what inspired me to become a teacher in the first place. And the reason I liked it is because I got to work really in depth, with a couple of students and really understand them and learn about them. And you do form a bond because they
Mm-hmm.
really remember you and appreciate you and you see their progress. Now you
Mm-hmm.
do see that as a class teacher, but
Mm-hmm.
when you have times 20 or times 30, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, you only have so much energy to give each of those children, and you might miss certain things. Whereas when you're a teaching assistant and you have to focus on a couple of children, because I was always a teaching assistant for children, maybe with autism or for social, emotional, mental health needs.
Mm-hmm.
I was I really enjoyed seeing the progress they were making, whether it was in their behavior or in their learning or in their
Mm-hmm.
own well-being. I really enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, but yeah, that's why I don't think AI can replace teachers. You can't replace that. You can't replace that connection, I believe.
That is very true. However, do you think that the government care about connection? They only care about results. Some schools only care about the result they get from those students. which is the A star, the A and the Bs. They don't care about the individual human being here. They don't care about the connection because they are so under pressure to
Yeah,
produce.
because that's what determines funding.
Exactly.
So the
Exactly.
more, the better your results, the better your funding is. And the better you look in the leagues and the more students you get from prospective parents. Yeah, it's a
Exactly.
market system. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Education is marketization because everybody's selling their wares to the students. Education is, we all go to the marketplace with our product, and the one who, have the best product would get the most buyers. That's what
Yeah.
education is all about. It's like everybody going along, it's like just imagine you're in a market and you have a range of same product,
Yeah.
but you're going to get for the value, one that gives you value for money, which is in
Yeah.
this case for the education, the one that has the highest A levels, A stars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So when schools are looking for that and looking at that, do you think they care about the connection? They care
Yeah.
about the result. And if AI is going to be able to program the student to do that, that's what they're going to do. Because when you look in terms of the students, how many students are critical thinkers? I was saying to my class
Mm.
before we broke up, I said to them, you guys, I'm all about critical thinkers. Think outside the box. One of them said to me, Miss, I'm just interested in getting the A stars. Woo! Miss,
Yeah.
because this is what matters now. And I
Yeah.
said, no,
Yeah.
what matters is you as a whole human being. No, Miss, I
Yeah.
can't think about that right now. I'm thinking about getting the A stars and the A's. That's what matters. So if the
Yeah.
students have been programmed and
Yeah.
conditioned to think like that,
Yeah.
do we as human being teachers have a chance against AI? Hell no.
Yeah, I value your point, and also I think as well it really shows when they get to uni, because in university um there is a bit more of, they really want to see that critical thinking aspect. So you're
Thank
supposed
you.
to
Yes.
prepare your children for that, kind of from GCSE onward. But um even in university, if you I mean, I remember when, from one of my experiences, I would always try to do what the brief was for the assignment. And I would also look at the marking scheme and I would think, okay, this is what I need to achieve. And I I couldn't believe it once when a student did something completely outside of the box, nothing to do with, it was related to, but not necessarily what the assignment asked for, and they got a really high grade.
Mhm,
And because we're not programmed for that, we've
mhm,
gone through the system of do do to the test,
mhm,
um, do what you need to do to get the grade, and
mhm,
not do what you need to do to show your understanding, to show
mhm,
your passion for the subject,
mhm,
to show that you've really mastered it. This is
mhm,
what happens. We all couldn't believe that someone who didn't get do the assignment the way that they were supposed to got a really high grade, and us who followed it to the book, we lacked certain aspects or we didn't
mhm,
get. And it made me think, if only there was more of that, it would
mhm,
allow children to be creative, to
mhm.
show their, you know, their
Understanding.
flair, and yeah, their
Mhm,
different approaches and their difference in
mhm,
understanding.
mhm,
But this is another reason why I'm bored with it.
mhm,
I think to myself, if I had my own class now, the way I would want to do things, you don't have time to teach the way they want you to teach now and condense everything. So because I get frustrated with that system of, you need to teach certain things, and they need to learn this, 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 and this, and you need to move them on quickly. And if you're not doing it, you're not a good teacher.
mhm,
I just think I would have such a different approach if only I could do things the way that I wanted to do them.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I so agree with you because this is one of the things I'm hammering on with my students. You guys need to think outside the box because
Mm.
when you get to university, they're not interested in robots,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
They're not. They don't. They want them to be able to think for themselves and evaluate points and make arguments and consider the different sides of an argument. And if you don't know or don't look for that, then you just think, okay, what do they want me to say? Let me just put that down. It doesn't show your real, yeah, it just lacks
It-
passion, it lacks enthusiasm. Yeah. So they really need, it's hard though.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard to instill that in children. It's hard
It
to instill.
it is so true because they are so programmed and conditioned. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful you saying that because I would really, like this piece you've just said, so that my student hear this piece,
Yeah.
because when I'm saying to them, you guys need to think outside the box because university don't want robots,
Yeah.
but they don't seem to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Because they haven't experienced it yet. They don't know what they're in for, what they're waiting for.
Yeah.
So they just, yeah.
That is so true. Thank you so much for that. Have you got anything else you want to say to my audience regarding your send, regarding education? You know, something else I'm going to ask you as well in terms of what would be 3 tips you would give to teachers to enable them to deal with their mental health and well-being, to reduce anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. What would you say to teachers? 3 tips you would give them to prevent those things.
I think it's really important based on my former experiences that they communicate as much as they can. Don't be afraid to speak to others in your team or senior management and kind of let them know how you're feeling. I mean, I'm sure people do this, but I think it's really important to let others in the school know how you are and not keep it to yourself because if your senior management should be supporting you. I think it's really important. I think the staff in the school and the way they support their staff should help. It really helps a lot in that school environment and how long a teacher stays there. If you know that you've got understanding senior leaders, I feel like you're more likely to be able to think you can cope, you know?
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to make it known. I think it's so important, um, well-being. And another tip is, well, I know that I haven't taught for a long time, but one thing I did learn from when I worked in a very challenging environment is you can't control everything. There are
Mhm.
just some things that are out of your control, or you shouldn't let get to you, or you know, it's it's a hard one to it is hard to achieve, but sometimes if things aren't going the way you want them to go in your lesson, or you feel like things aren't going right in your career, or in your teaching career, or you feel like, I think it's good to kind of ground yourself, remind yourself
Mhm.
that this is temporary, that you can only do so much, and if you
Mhm.
feel like you are putting in the effort, you need to acknowledge that.
Mhm.
And just remember, you can't make everything perfect or be in control of everything. Do what you
Mhm.
can.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think we can get quite uptight and,
Mhm.
authoritarian, especially with our children sometimes. We can think, you know what? We are too hard on ourselves, and sometimes we're too hard on the kids as well. Let's relax a
Mhm.
bit. Let's
Mhm.
Not everything has to be so rigid.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the final tip is, it might be a controversial one, but for me, it's just like, for me, is if you don't feel like you're being supported, go somewhere else. I don't think it benefits you to stay somewhere where you don't feel that you're adequately supported, because you will suffer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's good to choose an environment that works with you. And maybe that's something I need to explore in the future.
Mhm.
Go somewhere where you feel it resonates with what you want to be as an educator, if that makes sense.
It does make
Uh,
lots of sense,
yeah.
lots of sense. Because as I keep saying to, I said to one of the agency, I went for a job and I said to him, if they offer it to you, don't accept it. I said, I'm not
Mm,
interested. He said to me, why don't you? I said, because I'm not interested. I said, when I go for jobs, if I don't feel it within my intuition, I know I'm not taking the job. I
yeah.
had nothing in the summer. I went for this interview and I came back and I said to the agent, I said, you know what, I'm not feeling it. I said, if they offer you the post, you reject it. I said to him, tell me, what do you mean reject it? I said, I don't want it. I said, tell them no, thank you. And he's
Yeah.
saying to me that, but you cannot go for a job on those basis. I said, yes, I can. I said, I don't feel that job, you
I
know.
think that agencies should be really careful about. I really hate that when they do that because I've worked with a lot of agencies as well. And what they do is they put you in for an interview
Mm-hmm.
because they obviously have the candidate, they have the client, the schools, for example, whoever they're working with, and their job is to get them someone. So when they have a candidate say, nah, you know what? I know I went for that interview, but I don't like it. It's that doesn't even benefit them because if you go somewhere you don't like, you're going to be out of there. They're
Exactly.
not going to keep you, and schools need consistency. They need staff they can rely on, and parents need staff, and most importantly children need staff they can rely on. The good thing about supply is you get a feel for what you like. That's
Yes.
why I did it for a bit to see,
Yeah.
is it the school? What is it about teaching that I'm not enjoying? And I
Mhm.
did. I went to different schools I was very strict with my agencies as well. I said, I'm not going to just take any school that comes up. I've had a hard year. I'm going to, I want to find schools that I feel like I align with.
Mhm.
Sometimes that happened, sometimes it didn't.
Mhm.
And I think um, that's a nice thing about supplying is that you can
Mhm.
go into different school, you pick up skills, you learn from each other, you learn what different schools are doing, so you can add it into your practice, and you can
Yeah.
see which schools work for you and which don't.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Mhm.
and you'll be surprised, but about the schools that you initially thought, I don't like this school, and then you think, you know what? No, I do. The teachers are supportive. The senior
Mhm.
leaders respect their staff, respect the children. They make good decisions.
Mhm.
Um, I was talking recently with a friend, and she said, you know what? My head teacher told me. My head teacher said to me the other day, look, the storm is here, but I'm gonna keep it as a full day in, but you guys just do PPA or do something. There's not gonna be any teaching today. We're sending the kids home. Do you know what I mean? Like just
Wow.
having an after valuing your staff is important. I think that's one of the main things that would be my priority basically.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
so yeah,
It is
it
so true.
it is true not to accept a school that you don't feel that you're suited to. I would never, now I know I would not do that. I would not put
Mm.
myself in that position. If I don't like it, I'm not doing it.
Yep. Yep. And I think it's so important because I was in a school this year from January to July. I love the school. I was in a school last year. I hated the school. I was in a school December, from September to December. And I said to them, if it was a long-term contract, I'd have been running out of the school because I
Yeah,
hated the school. I'm
yeah,
in a school right now, which I love because I align with the school. I've gone for an interview and I'm saying, you know what? I'm not even interested. It's like agency come, oh, I've got so school for you. I say, I'm not interested. Why not? The school that's just, we don't align, we don't connect.
yeah. They put
And
pressure on you as well. They want to just
yes,
get there, but they don't. It doesn't
yes,
benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit going somewhere you don't like. You leave,
yeah,
and it impacts on the children, the parents, and the school itself.
yep. Totally, totally agree. Have you got anything else you want to say to my audience before we say goodbye to them?
I just want to say that I've really enjoyed having this lovely discussion and conversation. I think we've touched on a lot of topics, and I look forward to in the future discussing again about anything send
Yes.
related and yeah, any kind of information about the EHCPs and how children with special needs are supported in schools. I'm happy to give information about that. So, yeah,
Yes. Thank you very much. It was a fantastic discussion. Yes, I'm
thank
going
you,
to
Debbie.
discuss with you, when you are able to come back so we could actually talk about the education, support plan,
Healthcare
etc.
plans.
So yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
people know what it is, people know, what to look for, parents know that what their rights are because a lot of parents don't know their rights when it comes to that
yeah,
because the local authority is not discussing it, the school is not discussing it. Parents just feel that they don't have a right, they just have to follow through. But you do have a right.
you
So it's
do have
important.
rights.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. Yeah, it's a very, very complicated system to navigate, and there's
Mhm.
so many different things happening. I do think schools I'm really su shocked at how little. Sorry, I know that we need to finish
No,
up,
no,
but
no, that's fine, that's fine.
I know that schools have less knowledge than they should about
Yeah.
these things, and I don't think it's their fault. I think that there is just a lack of um training or understanding. I don't know, because I've worked with a lot of Senkos and they know things. They know obviously kind of the process and how it works and they liaise with schools, but I still, in terms of speaking to the parents, I sometimes feel like, the parents don't seem to have got the information they need. The school
Hmm.
must lack some information. They're not passing it to parents. There
Hmm.
are other services that parents can use as well. And yeah, if I came back on, I would be happy to discuss, what different options are out there for parents.
Yes,
Yeah.
not if, yes, you and I are gonna have a conversation after. So I want you to come back in the next few weeks so that you can actually discuss that because
Yeah.
parents need to know what their options are. Because
Yeah.
as I was saying to you, I was talking to our parents today, and he just feel lost. And it was
Yeah.
so good that, here we are having this conversation. So definitely, I do want you to come back on to explain all of that so that parents know what options are available and parents know how they could get involved. So they be part of this whole process,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know. And I don't think
That would
that.
be great.
Yeah, so we are going to speak after. So, you're definitely going to be coming back on specifically for that, not as an
Thank
educator, but as a specialist to discuss that. Thank you
thank
very,
you.
very much. It was fantastic, as I say, and you've actually covered a hell of a lot, which is
Yeah. Thank you
brilliant.
so much as well. I've had a great time and I look forward to speaking again with you and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Facebook audience, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday when I have, what is it I have? Oh, um, empowerment session. Oh my goodness, my brain's going. When we have female
It's
empowerment,
late.
I know it's female empowerment, and we'll be talking about why some women actually got onto those empowerment journey. So we'll be talking about that next Wednesday. And next Friday, we're gonna have homeschooling, and Saturday we're gonna have another show like that. Thank you guys. Take care, stay blessed, and share, share, share because all of these things that we're doing, it's important that you guys share it. It's important that you guys discuss it. It's important that you guys see what's there, see what's going on in the education field, because some of you have children and you don't even know what's going on. It's important that you guys listen to know what's happening. Take care, stay blessed, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.